Have you heard of dinner for one? Do you have any idea what klugscheißen means? Did you know that Germans love to sing? Hello and welcome to another episode of Transcontinental Overload. I'm Stephanie, your host, and my guest today is Shaun Behrens, a South African living in my old neck of the woods, Bavaria in southern Germany. Shaun has his own podcast. It's called The Germany Experience, where he talks about life in Germany through the eyes of mostly non-Germans who have a connection to Germany, currently live there or used to live there, and they discuss what it's like to deal with Germany and the Germans from an outsider's point of view. It's an excellent podcast. I totally recommend it. So make sure you click the link in the show notes. I actually was a guest on Shaun's podcast earlier this year when my own podcast was still in the making, and we had a lot of fun comparing notes on Germany. Shaun promised to put in an appearance on my podcast, and I'm thrilled to have him on here today and share this episode with you. I hope you enjoy our chat as much as I did. We're covering a ton of subjects, including a lot of German peculiarities, not just the language, but also the people. And there are a lot of generalizations in there. I hope you can take them with a pinch of salt. We had a lot of fun ripping the Germans to shreds, but Shaun's enthusiasm for Germany and all things German shines through very strongly. I even got a little bit homesick. But enough waffling on and on from me. Let's hear Shaun's story. Hi Shaun, it's so nice to be talking to you today. It's been a while since our last conversation.
Well, thank you for inviting me, Steph, because we, as you said, we have spoken again, so it's nice to talk to you again after all this time.
Yes, yeah. How are you doing in Germany? Officially today, it's mask wearing Pflicht, so you have to wear your masks when you're out in public, or else you get a substantial fine. I saw
up to 5,000 euros, so it could be quite bad.
Yeah, it feels funny for me to have you being in Germany, and I'm not, and I kind of feel like I should be. This is part of this whole COVID-19 paranoia. Some days I wake up and I think I would rather be somewhere else.
Okay.
And, but I'm not sure there is actually a perfect place at the moment.
I don't think there is. I mean, if you look at what's happening in the States with how the political system is dealing with that and everything, you can ask a lot of questions, but I think Germany has got some things right up until now. But the question is, how long do they keep getting it right? Because we're at a very crucial point now where they're trying to decide how to open up Germany.
Yeah. At this point, Shaun and I just veered off into a very deep political, philosophical, intellectual discussion of how our respective governments are dealing with the coronavirus crisis, and also how the population is dealing with it and responding to it, because there's such huge differences, and it's just interesting to see how different people react to different rules and regulations. I had to edit it out for the purpose of this episode, but it also made me smile because small talk is not a German thing. Germans don't really spend a lot of time chit-chatting, and the fact that we went straight into such a deep discussion showed me how much Shaun had got used to the customs of the country he made his home. So where in Germany do you live, Shaun?
I live in the middle of nowhere.
Well, it sounds perfect for right now.
Yeah, it is actually a very good place to be because we have had some infections, some COVID-19 infections around here, but there's not that many, and everything is still looking pretty good around here. And it's easy to keep your distance when you go out for walks and everything. It's very easy to be out rural at this point in time.
Yes.
So I live in Middle Franconia, which is, and I'm about 40 kilometers away from Nuremberg. So Bavaria, basically.
Bavaria, yes. Well, that's where I'm from originally.
Yeah.
So,
Although you're from deep Bavaria, to be fair.
Deep Bavaria.
I learned very early on when I arrived here. I got to the first city that we lived in was Schweinfurt, which is a very small city, and then we moved to Würzburg. But when we moved to Schweinfurt, I happened to make the mistake of saying to them in Schweinfurt that this is Bavaria and it's great, and they were very offended. They said, "This is not Bavaria. This is Unterfranken. This is Lower Franconia." And I mean, it is in Bavaria. You are in Bavaria, but the Franconians do not see themselves as Bavarians. So
no,
don't say
but
that.
then you have it's one of those funny things, isn't it? That Germany is not a very big country, but the differences are huge, and the pride is huge, and it's funny. I mean, I live in Texas, so I always find that Texas is kind of the Bavaria of the United States. Because people here are also very proud of where they're from, and and if you're West Texas or East Texas, or that people do look down on certain parts, and and they would always say they're Texan before they'd say they're American, and I think the Bavarians are very similar to that. Yeah,
it's the same.
So how did you end up in Germany? You're originally from South Africa?
Yes, South African born. I grew up on the coast, the east coast of South Africa, in a very, well, not a very small town, but had about 100,000 people. So it was, let's call it a city. It was actually a small city, and it's called East London. So I grew up at the coast, very chilled way of life. And then I moved to Johannesburg, and I lived in Johannesburg for 10 years, and that's very hustle and bustle, big financial center of South Africa and of Africa, of course. And it's a great place to be in your 20s like I was. But then towards the end of my 20s, when I met my wife and then my girlfriend, and we did a lot of traveling to Europe, and it costs a fortune to travel to Europe from South Africa, and it's a long flight. It's about 11 hours to get from Johannesburg to Frankfurt, for example. So we'd seen a lot of European countries, not Germany, funny enough, but we'd been to London and Holland, and where else? Italy, Switzerland, you name it, we'd been there except for Germany. And then my wife ended up getting a job offer in Germany at the company she was working with in South Africa, and we wanted to travel and see more of Europe. So we said, well, this will be the perfect opportunity. And at the same time, we were becoming disillusioned with the criminality in Johannesburg. And we made the decision, right, let's see what a different way of life would be somewhere else. So, and when my wife got the job, it was a bit nerve-wracking for me to make a decision to move to a country that I'd never been.
That's a big decision.
It was a huge decision. But we took the mindset of we go there. She's got a job. I would have maybe a year. We said, in fact, we gave me a year to find a job. And if I didn't find a job within a year, we would just go back. Or if we didn't like it, or if there was something that we really hated about Germany, we would go back to South Africa after a year. So that was the plan. We just came over to see what it was like. And it was such an adventure. It was such a, learning a new language at the same time. And it was just very, very exciting. And I'm the kind of person who gets bored very, very easily. So my wife, not so much. She likes things to be structured and ordered. And that's why I think Germany suits her so well.
That sounds like it's a perfect fit.
She's more German than a lot of Germans that I know. But in a lot of ways, she's not, of course. But for me, it's a good. I find living in a foreign country where things are particularly difficult because you don't understand the language, it produces enough challenges to keep things interesting for a long, long time. And in fact, I've been here now 13 years, since 2007, and I'm still not bored because every day I'm learning something. Every day I'm confused about something. I'm still making mistakes with the language. So it's still got that element of adventure, even though it's frustrating sometimes. It's still you don't get bored, basically.
Yeah. I guess also the German language is something that I can't even imagine what it must be like to learn it as a foreign language. I don't think I'm so grateful that I didn't have to do that.
It's tough. But for in our case, it wasn't as tough as it could have been because in South Africa, as a second language, I learned Afrikaans, which is a version of, or it was originally a dialect of Dutch, and now, of course, it's become its own language. It's one of the newest languages in the world. So I already knew Afrikaans, and it has got a very similar grammatic structure to German. So it's got the verb in position 2, but Afrikaans is wonderful because what they've done is they've taken Dutch and they've taken the grammatical structure of German as well, and they've simplified it. So they've dropped all the extra articles, they've dropped the weird declinations and stuff, and they've done a great job at just simplifying what all the other languages should have done already.
So 13 years, that's a sizable chunk of time.
Yeah.
And And did you ever consider in that time to go back to South Africa, or was it just?
I don't think
it kind of.
It was. Yeah, I think in our minds, like I said, we had that first year as the first test to see, is this something we're going to do, or that, because we can come back at any time in that first year. And then after that first year, we said, okay, let's give it 3 years. And then there was even before that 3 years was up, it was clear to us that we weren't going to leave here, particularly because of the security and the safety that we felt in Germany compared to Johannesburg. Johannesburg is a very, very, you live in paranoia all the time. You live behind these huge gated walls, and there's electric fencing around. So, for example, where we lived in Johannesburg, it was a townhouse complex surrounded by a large wall, and then there was electric fencing around it, and there was a security guard at the gate. And when you go anywhere, you're nervous because you could get hijacked stopped at a traffic light. So if you stop, quite often people would be hijacked at gunpoint. So you're forever on the lookout. And just to move somewhere where we didn't have that constant looking over our shoulders and being afraid at night when you hear a noise outside, it was a huge thing for us. And it's difficult to explain to people who don't understand that kind of freedom, what it feels like when you have it. So that was something that was just, to us, as much as we missed home and many aspects of home, just that simple fact of security and safety and freedom here that we didn't have back home was enough to make the decision without us making the decision.
I visited South Africa once, and that was just after, like 95, I think. So
just after apartheid.
Wow. I mean, it was amazing, and such a beautiful country, such an absolutely beautiful country. But yeah,
it is a beautiful country.
I mean, we were and there were a few situations where, I mean, our house got broken into, a car got stolen, I think twice. And
really? Oh my God.
Yeah. So there were a few things that, this is very different to what I'm used to, having grown up in safe Bavaria. So, but what a stunning country. So you must be missing some things about it. Is there anything?
I don't know if I miss. There are one or two things that I still miss now after 13 years. I think after 13 years, we've been here long enough for this to completely feel like home. Germany definitely feels like home, even though to some degree we still feel like outsiders. And I still feel like a tourist every single day. It's like, it's a great feeling, but there are one or two things that I miss. I think the biggest thing that I miss is the friendliness and openness of the people. So I always tell the story of the first time we'd been in Germany for a while, and then we traveled back to South Africa. I think it was maybe a year and a half after being in Germany. And we landed at Johannesburg International Airport, and we got off the plane and we approached customs. And now if you approach customs on the German side, like coming into Germany, those guys glare at you. They look down, they look at your passport, and they don't say much to you. And then you feel very anxious and think, oh my God, are they going to let me in? Or am I going to be questioned in the back room or something? And then they kind of just nod and grunt something to you and give you your passport back. But when you get back to South Africa, the change is immediate. You walk up, and even before you get to the customs booth, the guy on that day looked up at me and he just grinned an amazingly huge smile and said, how's it going? As if we'd known each other forever. And I was like, man, that is amazing. I have missed that. And I think it's similar to Americans in some ways. A lot of people say that it's fake, but to me, it's not fake, because the people are generally happy to see other people. We may ask, how are you, and not really care how you are, but we South Africans are generally very excited to just smile and be friendly and make a connection on that level.
I just think it's a cultural thing. It's just, like you said, it's people here is the same thing. And I notice it every time I go back to Germany, but also the UK. They're very similar, Brits and Germans in that respect. Yeah. And here it's even just waiting in line somewhere, people will always start a conversation. It's like there's no ulterior motive. It's just because
we'll never see each other again.
Why not? Because I've actually found that I've picked up so many really interesting just tidbits about this country and how people tick just by those tiny little stories that you people just being friendly. And
little interactions that you have that you wouldn't have had otherwise.
Absolutely. And so I'm very used to that now too. And I always I try and take it with me when I go to Germany. And
exactly. exactly. And I find that you get used to it after a while. Anyway, with here in Germany, I do miss that openness, but I also like how the Germans are in a lot of ways. I like that there are clear boundaries about where you stand with someone. So sometimes that's a bit frustrating because it's difficult to crack them, get behind that. Yeah, but at the same time, you know where you stand with them, so you understand if you've just met someone. And of course, this is a generalization because it's not always like that. We've also had friends where we just hit it off from the moment we met each other. But generally, you know, okay, if I've just met this German, I'm not going to be inviting him over to dinner just yet. I'm going to wait a little while before we've had a few interactions and gotten to know each other a bit better. So in some ways, that's also good to have that sort of rules of engagement to go by.
Definitely. I mean, yeah, that's good and bad sometimes. And then it's almost like with Germans, I always find that once you know how to get in, once you know how to crack them, then you can really rely on them.
Yes. Yeah.
But it does take a while, and the language certainly is not the easiest to get.
And where we are in rural Franconia, the chances of anyone switching to English around here is very slim. They do. I mean, a lot of people here actually can speak English quite well, but they generally don't switch over here in where I'm living because it's so rural. There's very few foreigners in my village that I live in that there's just no need. And then on top of that, they speak Franconian. So it's a very, very thick dialect.
That is absolutely.
And in the cities, the big cities like Munich or Nuremberg, they will maybe speak more Hochdeutsch, which is, I guess, the cleaner German, if you want to call it that. And it's a bit of a different ball game in the big cities, but in rural Germany, you're dealing with the dialects, and it's
so
very
when you speak German, do you have a Franconian dialect? Do you think?
I think so. People. I spoke to someone in Berlin, and he said, "Oh, are you living in Franconia?" I was like, "Yes, I am actually." So I've obviously picked up a lot of the Franconian habits.
I think that's only natural.
Yeah,
and especially
and I say things like "pastor" and
That's so funny.
It's sad.
I love it. I think in a way it's nice because I feel like in Berlin you can probably just get by not ever speaking German.
I think so, yeah.
And
from what I've heard.
So which is very convenient and makes it a lot easier for foreigners to come and live there, I guess. Yeah. But I think learning the language is so much part of the expat experience because of just all the cultural things that a language brings with it. So do you have any favorite words, favorite German words?
That's a good question. Actually, I have my very first favorite German word. The first time I heard it, I just thought this was the best word I've ever heard, is manchmal. And I don't know why, but manchmal, which means sometimes, just sounded to my English brain like a ridiculous made-up word. Manchmal. And it was just, I just became obsessed with that word and used it whenever I could because it just sounded, back then when I was first learning German, it just sounded so amazing. I'm like, this is incredible. Any language that can have a word like manchmal in it must be great. So I would say that. And then what I've loved in recent times is how people make new words in German, how you can take related words and put them together and then come out with a new word. And I can't think... So I've started doing that in sentences. If I can't think of the right word, sometimes I'll just combine different German words and people know what I'm talking about, even though it's not a word that exists. And an example of that, not from me, was this week. I don't know if you saw Angela Merkel was talking about opening up the parliament. And she said something about Öffnungsdiskussions, what was it? Öffnungsdiskussionsorgien, which means... It means discussion orgies about opening up the economy. Yeah. And that word doesn't exist. No. But she took 3 different words and put it in, and it just brings up a very specific picture to your mind.
That's
so you know
funny.
Exactly what she means. What else is there? There are a few that I love, but I'm trying to think of off the cuff right now.
Obviously, they're all the made up ones. So obviously, you are doing home office right now. I expect. Are you doing home office?
I am doing home office, but that drives me crazy, Steph. So the Germans have this way of taking English terms, and I think probably the most famous of it is the word handy, which in America or in English means it's useful, or I guess that's what it means. But the Germans have they use it for mobile telephone. So a mobile telephone is,
and they're the only ones. No one else calls a mobile phone.
But this is what's so incredible, Steph, is that, like you mentioned, home office. So home office means working from home, and they use it as a verb. So they'll go, ich arbeite home, ich mache home office. Yeah. I'm making home office is what that translates to. And in no shape or form do English people use that in that way.
No.
We say, maybe this is my home office where I'm sitting now. I'm sitting in my home office because it's my office at home.
But they wouldn't. That's it. I think they wouldn't even say that.
No.
They would say, this is my office.
This is my office.
At home, maybe, but not home. But obviously, because home office is like the interior ministry in the UK. You've got the home office. It is. And so it's like you wouldn't ever say home office in terms of personal.
No one would say it except the Germans. Except the Germans would say it, and it drives me crazy. And we've been doing a lot of things at work with remote work recently, and people just continuously say home office, home office. I'm like, it's not. It's working from home or remote working. Just forget it. Just forget it. But they've done it with a lot of other things. So one of the things that I love is the old timer. So in English, old-timer is slang. Old-timer is slang, first of all, for someone who's really old, like they're an old-timer.
Yeah.
But Germans use it to describe classic cars. It's an old-timer. And why would you choose that word to talk about a car? And then they expect that when they speak to English people, they refer to these cars as old-timers. And English people don't have a clue what they're talking about.
Yeah.
So.
Oh, what else is there? The smoking. A smoking? To wear a smoking? Do you own a smoking? Have you heard this one?
No.
Ooh, it's a tuxedo.
Okay.
So a black tie event.
Smoking.
It's called...
I haven't heard that.
I have to dust off my smoking.
Oh no.
I have to borrow a smoking. Yeah, well, here. I've learned something there, Shaun.
I have learned something. So again, what learned, as the Germans say.
It sounds English. It's an English word, but it actually...
And they honestly think that English people refer to it the same way. Because I think a lot of Germans assume they just directly borrowed it from the English-speaking language. But somewhere, someone used it in this way, and it just stuck.
But there's a lot of things like that. What's the program everyone watches on New Year's Eve?
Dinner for One.
Dinner for One.
Yeah.
I, as every good German, grew up watching Dinner for One, which is a
comedy skit,
and it's English.
Yeah.
So what is it about? It's about this aristocratic lady and her butler, and she is celebrating. And she has 4 guests, but they all deceased, so they're not there, but their places are set, and the butler is impersonating all of them.
Yes, and taking drinks in their place.
Their place, so he's getting more and more drunk, and it's just the same procedure as every year, she says.
Yeah.
And he's like, must I? And she says, yes, James. Same procedure as every. I grew up watching this. Everyone I knew watched it, and then I moved to the UK, and it was New Year's Eve, and I realized that no one has heard of this. And to me, because it's the quintessential you just think as a German, you think this is English humor, it's everything. And it's not. And that was so fascinating to me. And when I made my husband watch it, I think that was New Year's Eve in Germany. And then we watched it, and he was like, is this supposed to be funny? So it was not only was it something he'd never heard of, and no one in the UK, funny at all. But it was just that's a sense of humor, and we all as Germans were convinced that that's English humor, and that's what it's all about, and it's not. And so it's the same thing.
Yeah, it is the same thing. But I can tell you something interesting with that show. We had it in South Africa as well. In South Africa, it is tradition on New Year's Eve to watch Dinner for One. Now, I don't know how that happened. Now, why is it that Germany has it and South Africa has it as a tradition specifically on New Year's Eve, and other countries have never heard from it? So it's very
maybe
strange.
We need to research that. But it's one of those things where you assume that it's not a German thing at all, and then it actually is the most German thing of all. But in a similar context, I had never heard of The Sound of Music.
Right.
You know,
Really?
the Trapp von Trapp family. Yeah. It's not something that you watch in Germany. It's not.
Sure.
But everyone in America and in the UK knows what Sound of Music is. And I still haven't watched it to this day. I've seen bits of it, but So, but English people assume that Germans know about
of course
that,
yeah.
and it's kind of a staple, and it's not. So I love that. I love that the preconceptions that you have of a place, you know, when you think you know, and then you realize you don't.
Yeah, but that's what's amazing about traveling in general. I think just that shift of perspective, because you don't know how much you don't know, because you're just taking it all for granted until you go somewhere else and see, oh my God, they do this completely differently, or the thing that I know as this concept is just not even a concept over here. And it's that major shift with travel. And I think sometimes when I see these big political divisions in countries, and you look at some of the mindsets and the viewpoints, and you think that comes from never being outside your own culture, never having experienced something beyond what you're used to. So I think it's a hugely important aspect of traveling, is exactly that, Steph, is that realizing what your preconceived notions are and how they may be incorrect or just based in your culture only.
Yeah. I guess in general, Germans are very diligent travelers.
Yeah. Yeah, they are.
They book a holiday and they prepare for the holiday. Yes.
Yeah.
On the whole, they like to educate themselves on the customs, sometimes maybe endearingly a little bit too much. And
some might say yes.
Pick up some of the expressions so that they can introduce themselves, or they make an effort, and they will have a guidebook with them and do all that. Whereas English people, and this is, again, it's a generalization, of course, as all of this is, but English people a lot of the time don't even think about maybe learning a few phrases, because they expect everyone to speak English, and they will just say, oh, it's just not worth it. I won't bother, because I'm going to be so bad at it anyway, and there's no point. And then
I'm just there for 2 weeks, so
and then they don't even make any effort.
I find the Germans, even you use the example of them going on vacation, but even beyond that, I find that they're very good at reading up about foreign cultures, because I can't tell you the amount of times when I've spoken to a German here, and not even, I mean, Germans at all levels, not just maybe very well educated Germans, Germans with normal educations as well. I would tell them I'm from South Africa, and they will talk to me about some aspect of our history, of South African history, that I wouldn't expect them to know. Or they would say something about a politician or something that's happening in the news now in South Africa. So they're very world wise, the Germans. And I think that's definitely something that I was amazed at when I first got here, is how much they know about my culture and things that I wouldn't expect them to know. And I think that's all part of it, of like how much they like to read, how much they like to research and understand things as well.
Yeah, that's true. And for Germans, it's very, very normal to travel and to look beyond their horizon and to learn something new. And it's part of it. And I think it's beautiful. I think it is. I think so too. Really nice. Although my husband always says it's like you could be on a mountain somewhere, and there'll be Germans there.
It's like, and they'll probably be singing. And
they'll be singing.
I will never forget when we were getting ready. We knew we were moving to Germany, and we took a trip down to Cape Town, because I'd never seen Cape Town in my 30 years up until that point. So I said to my wife, then girlfriend, I said, if I'm going to move to Germany, I need to see Cape Town before I go, because people are going to ask me about Cape Town, and I need to have seen Cape Town. So we went down to Cape Town, and we hiked up all the way to the top of Table Mountain in Cape Town, which overlooks the whole bay, and it's spectacularly beautiful there. And we had the most amazing sunset. And then we just heard Germans singing in the background. We looked around, there was a whole group of sort of elderly Germans just singing songs, and they were harmonizing and everything. And I was like, oh my God, those are Germans, aren't they? And I was just like, that's the country we're going to, that was one of my earliest moments of seeing Germans, when I knew I was coming to Germany, and I was like, okay, I could live with that. But it was very funny.
No, I have never experienced anything like that. I've experienced people reciting from a guidebook. I have had that experience, and being a little bit What is this other brilliant German word, which is klugscheißen?
Klugscheißen,
which is one of my it's one of my favorites too. Which is literal translation is smart shitting.
Smart shitting. I guess the closest translation would be smart ass or
know it all.
It's more like
know it all. It's that's a very German thing too. But singing, I love that. But that's also see, this would you'd never find a group of Brits singing at the top of a mountain. No, never ever, unless they're very drunk.
Probably, yeah. That's I was just about to say. I think you would if they've had enough alcohol, which the Brits don't have a problem with as well.
No, not at all. No, that's very true. But the Germans, I feel, are very. They don't have that sense of embarrassment. Sometimes you just kind of think they're very brave. Sometimes,
yeah they are.
they reveal a lot. Oh, that must have been So this is the country we're going to. People are like that.
Yeah. So this is where we're going. Okay. All right. Well, do we have to learn the songs?
That's fabulous. But songs, that's so funny. And a lot of Germans will, actually be able to recite poems and sing songs from out of. I mean, I could probably sing you the Bavarian national anthem. I don't know what it is. Maybe it's a German thing. Yeah. That's really interesting. I couldn't tell you what I ate for dinner yesterday, but I can.
But you can sing the German, the Bavarian national anthem.
Yeah, that's so funny. Anything really embarrassing or funny that happened to you while living in Germany? I mean, along the way.
I think there's lots. I think when you're learning a new language, there's just constant embarrassment. It's one of the things you have to be prepared for when learning a new language. You gotta be willing to be embarrassed. You gotta be willing to say something stupid and really stupid in front of a lot of people. And the Germans will have no problem about tearing you apart about it and making you feel even more stupid.
Klugscheißen part.
Yeah, that's the Klugscheißen.
It's just being honest.
They're just being honest, and actually they're trying to help you in a lot of ways, but they just make an embarrassing situation more embarrassing. So I've had many. So it's difficult to think of a few, but the one I remember when I was first learning German. And this is the thing about learning any language, I guess, is that's the fine differences between words is what often trips you up. And even still, after 13 years, this is what these kinds of things get me. But I told my manager once that she was asking about a meeting at some point, and I said, "Ich bin erhältlich," which means erhältlich it means available, right? But not in the sense of me as a person. It's like a product is available. So that product is available on the shelves. It's little things like that. Like I thought I was using the right word and it meant the right thing in a way, but just not the way I was trying to use it. Or another embarrassing moment. It sounds more like
you can buy me.
Yeah, I'm available for purchase. I'm available for purchase.
Yeah.
And I said that in a meeting and I got shot down very quickly. My German started picking up as when I was less afraid to make mistakes. I just thought, screw it. And I've often heard people say that they speak better German when they've had a few drinks.
Oh, yes.
And I think that's exactly the reason that they speak better German is because they're less afraid. So after a few drinks, you don't care if you make a mess. So you speak freely and your brain puts things together and you actually can speak much better than you think it is. So then you think you can, then you can speak much better than you think you can. And I have not been drinking, by the way. And
how have you been able to do that in being at home and?
Yeah, I don't know actually.
That's very good. I wish I could say the same, but
no, I have. I think, as I said earlier, the job going on all the time is. I'm still working full days. Plus, we've got 3 kids at home. There's literally no chance for me to drink because I know if I have a drink in the afternoon,
it just knocks you.
I'm gonna be.
You're gonna be useless.
Yeah, can't function.
Yeah. So, how old are your kids?
So my kids I've got a 9-year-old son. He has special needs, and so he's got general disabilities with motor skills, with intellectual abilities, and everything. And then we have a 4-year-old daughter who's really, let's say, discovering that she can exert her will upon the world. And she's in a very difficult phase right now. And then we have a 6-month-old baby who's just arrived, and very cute, but it's a very difficult distribution of kids.
Wow. And now I'm even more impressed that you're not drinking.
Yeah, me too.
But
me too.
But yeah, that so they're all born in Germany. So they're all
born in Germany.
Little Germans.
Yeah.
How is that going with so you're speaking English with them, and they're picking up German from school, preschool. Yeah.
We only speak English at home, and my son, it's a bit more difficult. Like I said, he's with his special needs. He's non-verbal still. He's starting to say a lot of short sentences and words, but with him it's been very difficult because learning just one language for him is tough. My daughter is incredible how she's picked up German. So we just spoke English with her at home, and she has gone to kindergarten and just picked up German at an alarming rate, and not just German, but Fränkisch. So she can really speak Franconian German.
That's so funny.
So she is fully, I would say almost fully bilingual at the age, and she's very advanced with her speech as well. She's very, very far ahead of other kids. I think it's because of the double language learning from a very young age. I think it's definitely progressed her in both languages very, very far.
No, I think kids are amazing like that.
Yeah,
they like you said,
they just pick it up.
Mm-hmm.
You don't even have to try.
Yeah, but it's so beautiful to see, especially when you haven't had that yourself. I always find it really amazing. It's like a big experiment.
Well, we were clueless because we didn't know. We just read a book when we had our first kid, and it said speak your native tongue with the children, because they have to get the nuances in your emotional expressions and stuff. So the general advice is, unless you're really proficient in the second language, speak your mother tongue, which is what the approach that we did. And I was always wondering, how are we going to teach them German? And as I said, with my daughter, it's just been a case of, she picks up the context. I often tell the story of where I was talking to a neighbor over the fence in German, and she always called me daddy. That was the name that she called me at home. And while I was talking to this neighbor over the fence in German, she ran up to me, and she was about 2 years old at that time, and she said, "Papi, papi," which is the German word for papa. It's like a
daddy.
Nice,
But
it came out. It came out of nowhere. I'd never taught her to call me that. I didn't know she knew that this word puppy exists. But not only she heard me speaking German, she realized, okay, this is German daddy now. And she switched over to German and then called me the German word for father. And not just the German word for father, but the kind of the sweet German word for father.
That's what
puppy.
her friends would call their daddies.
Exactly.
Right?
Exactly. So she'd seen that. But just the seeing this, that she knew switch over now because daddy is speaking German.
Yeah.
And
so
she
was in her brain was going into German zone.
Yeah.
And that's I love that. So obviously it's in a different part of the brain.
It's compartmentalized. And I think that's the problem that we as adults have, is exactly that. We're learning it by labeling things and sticking things on top of things that we already know. But they are not doing that. They don't know anything. They're just putting it into two separate compartments altogether, and that's how they're learning the languages. So it's really two separate entities, basically, in their brains. And I've seen that as well with my daughter specifically, because as I said, she knows how to switch over in different contexts. But also when I speak German to her, she doesn't like it because that's obviously this. Unless there are other people around, then she understands we speak in German because everyone. But if it's just her and I.
Yeah.
And I switch to German, she always switches me back. And she's often told me she doesn't like speaking German with me.
Yeah.
And it's just, I guess it's because I'm not part of that. Like, I'm English, and she knows that I'm English, and this is the way she deals with me. So that's also very interesting to observe and see how they handle.
And I found that you can read all the books about it that you want and pick up on people's tips and this and that. But ultimately, it's so individual. Like each family has to work out what works for them, and
each kid is different as well. Because I find even from the different between, even with us with a kid with special needs and then my daughter, of course, there's a massive difference in how we approach the language learning for both of them. So it's interesting to see how my 6-month-old will deal with it, and to see how she picks up the language as well, especially that she's got an older sister that will be pretty proficient in German.
It'll be interesting to see what language they use with each other, whether they use both or just
that's
the one.
That's what I'm curious about. Yeah.
Is that a secret one that the parents don't understand?
I'm pretty sure. Yeah. I'm pretty sure that's what we'll have.
it looks like you really love living where you do, and appreciate where you are and all that. Is there anything that you find really annoying? The German thing that drives you absolutely crazy.
Yeah, I think I don't really get frustrated by things. I guess that's what a benefit in some ways. But the thing that does, I think the biggest thing that bothers me is the Germans. They have a way of overanalyzing things, and they'll overanalyze everything and anything, basically. So even if I just said something, I say a lot of throwaway comments, and I make a lot of jokes, which I literally just throw out there, and they've got no meaning. Sometimes they're even like not even that funny, and I will put something out there, and I'm used to in South Africa, you just do that, and the joke is gone, and then people have moved on. But the Germans will latch onto the smallest thing that you say and think, why has he said that? What is the point behind it? Because, they automatically assume that you're trying to make a specific point by something that you've just said, where for me, it was really a throwaway comment. I was just filling dead space with words sometimes. And it doesn't fly well with the Germans because they need to understand. And then they start drawing interpretations, which I never intended. And I'm like, no, that's just...
It's just, let it go.
Yeah. Or if you're doing something, if they ask you what you did on the weekend and you say something about, I don't know what an example would be, like you did some gardening, but you did it in a specific way. And then they were like, but why are you doing it like that? If you waited until a few weeks later, you could do it like that. And, well, because I wanted to do it now. I was just, I'm not, everything is pre-planned of when I need to do it. And I think that frustrates me is that they are it comes across as judgmental sometimes, that they're judging you for doing something really stupid or doing something that they find absolutely ridiculous. Why would you do it like that? I told a story on my podcast once when I was out at a hardware store, and generally we get our wood delivered we have a masonry oven. So we get the wood delivered once a year in autumn. And then, we got enough to see it through the winter. But this year, I ran out of wood, and it was really cold. We went through a cold snap. So I went to the hardware store. And now the thing about it is I know buying wood from the hardware store is ridiculously expensive, and you get really bad wood. It's fine. But it was going to be like -4 or something.
Last resort. You just
This
needed
was
it.
literally all I had, because we had phoned the people who usually provide our wood, and they said, you're going to have to wait a week. And I was like, okay, but then the cold snap's going to be gone.
Yeah.
And then I went to the hardware store, and then I was packing a trolley full of a few bags of wood. I mean, it was maybe 6 or 7 bags of wood. And a guy coming into the hardware store saw me, stopped dead in his tracks, stared at me as if this was the most ridiculous thing he was seeing in his life. And then
But just another customer.
Yeah, another customer coming into the hardware store. And then, Steph, he came over to me specifically and said,
I can
it's
guess.
something like, entschuldigen Sie bitte, excuse me, but do you know that buying wood from a hardware store, that it's very, very expensive? And then he went on to tell me about how he gets his wood from the forest. He goes once a year, cuts trees down in the forest, cuts them up, and then chops them to be the right size to put in his fireplace, and then takes them home. And I'm like, why do I care? I don't care what you are telling me about right now. I can't tell you my whole backstory, because I'm not going to, as the German word is rechtfertig, which is another word. That is a word I like, by the way, rechtfertig.
Oh, yeah, that's a good one.
I don't have to justify myself, or don't have to explain myself to a complete stranger. But the fact that he felt the need to come over to me and chide me for buying wood from a hardware store, that's the kind of thing that frustrates me to no end.
Yes. Oh, I can.
And it's not everyone. I will say it's not everyone, but there are Germans.
Yes, absolutely. It's like I knew when you said that another customer approaching me, I knew what you were going to say.
Yeah. And then I guarantee you he went home to his family and told his family. And probably then when he had visitors on the weekend, he was telling people about this guy that was buying wood from the... Can you imagine? A guy buying wood from the hardware store?
Oh, my God. I always like to end my episodes with a little input. Is there anything that you do, or a recipe that you have, or when you miss home, when you miss South Africa?
Yeah, it's a bit of a difficult one, because we've been here for so long. I feel like we've adopted a lot of the German traditions, and we've dropped so many of our South African traditions, because oftentimes you can't find the right food. If it's a food-based thing, you can't find the right ingredients to bake your favorite whatever cake or whatever. Or if it's some kind of celebration, you can't find the right things in the stores. And yeah, we've dropped a lot of our family traditions, but I think the ones that we've kept very strongly are the Christmas traditions. And that's something I think that for us is a little piece of home in a way, although we've brought in some German things into it. But Christmas we celebrate like we used to in South Africa. So in South Africa, the Christmas we have Christmas Eve dinner, and this is not all over South Africa. It was specific to my wife's family, and this is the tradition that we've adopted. So Christmas Eve would be where we have the big dinner, the whole family comes around, and traditionally we have roast lamb, and it's just a very different to what the Germans would expect. And then on Christmas Day, because it's in South Africa, Christmas of course is in summer, it's usually very, very hot. So you just have cold meat, and you make rolls, or you just have this big buffet of salads and cold meats, and that's what we do here. We've kept that to that. We've kept the Christmas present opening, much to my chagrin, to Christmas morning. I've been trying to convince my wife for 13 years so that we open our presents on Christmas Eve. She's not going for it. So we open them on 25th of December. And so Christmas is very much like a little bastion of South African traditions, but also family traditions, not necessarily specifically South African traditions, but a lot of old family traditions that we've brought with us. And I think it helps not to cling too tightly to too many traditions. Although I can see how for some people those kinds of things would get them through difficult times, or get them through loneliness, or maybe even times like we're having now. I can imagine a lot of fresh foreigners in different countries are really struggling right now because they're isolated, and they're not really seeing the culture that they're in. It's a tough situation. Yeah. So I guess that's where those traditions from home would see you through and make you feel more comfortable. But I think we've just been here for too long now for enough time for us not to need those kinds of traditions from back home.
It's been really nice talking to you, Shaun.
Yeah, it has.
Thank you so much for taking the time.
Thanks for inviting me, Steph.
So if people want to listen to you, why don't you tell us about your podcast and your website? Yeah,
so my podcast is The Germany Experience, and it's basically the view of life in Germany through the eyes of outsiders. So I speak to all kinds of people who are currently living here, who have been here for a while. And I also occasionally speak to people who have connections with Germany who might not be living there, like Steph, you.
I kind of sneaked on there.
Yeah, you did. But I've also had a few, like I spoke to an American whose family was Jewish and escaped during the Holocaust. So there's a lot of, I like any kind of connection or ties to life in Germany. But predominantly it is foreigners who are living in Germany at the moment. Yeah. And people can find me at thegermanyexperience.de. And if you want links to everything, like the recent episodes, my social media, and where you can subscribe to the podcast, go to thegermanyexperience.de/subscribe.
Excellent. I can absolutely recommend this podcast for anyone who's it's great entertainment, and your topics are such a big variety too.
It's very varied, yes.
I think for anyone who has plans to move to Germany, maybe, or is considering it or thinking about it, and also I think for Germans, it's a really good way of learning about your country, because I find that I have learned so much more about Germany since I moved away from Germany. Yeah. Sometimes people who live you don't appreciate what you have, or you just can't see beyond the horizon. You can't see it from an outsider's point of view. So it's really interesting to listen to people who've come there and made their life there, and what their impressions are. Oh, well, thank you again.
Thanks,
it was really great talking to you, and until next time.
Auf Wiederhören.
Ja, auf Wiederhören. So that was our chat. I hope you had fun and maybe learned something new about the Germans. We recorded this episode about a week ago, and I have to say I had a couple of pretty bad days, feeling quite blue and dejected and homesick, and was kind of resenting the fact that I might not be able to see my friends and family in the next few months or even this year. And I felt really uplifted after our chat. Shaun's sense of adventure, enthusiasm, and willingness to learn and laugh at himself, putting himself out there, was quite infectious. And I thought that that's exactly the attitude you need when you move countries and make a new country your home. So yeah, make sure you check out his website and podcast. All the links you need are in the show notes. Our chat also made me think about Germany and the Germans in general, and it didn't occur to me during our conversation, but once I'd finished editing it, it was glaringly obvious to me. You might have heard the phrase that Germany is das Land der Dichter und Denker, the land of poets and thinkers. I'm not sure who coined that phrase, but I kind of feel like our conversation completely proved that. What do you think? So that's it from me for today. Have a good week and see you next time.